There I was, sprawled out on the scratchy gray couch in my quiet little one-bedroom apartment, watching my phone light up like it was auditioning for a horror movie, buzzing nonstop, vibrating across the coffee table like it was trying to crawl its way back into my life. First it was her, then him, then my brother, of course. I didn't pick it up, I just watched, arms folded, jaw tight, letting the screen blink over and over. Sophia, Thomas, and yep, there it was, Noah, like clockwork. The whole family ensemble casting desperate shadows on my screen, like they were stuck in some bad sitcom rerun where I was the punchline. It had been 6 months since I left. No door slamming, no dramatic monologue, just me, a duffel bag, and a note left on the counter that said, "Don't call, I'm done." I meant every word of it. And yet, here we were, me in my own apartment, bills paid on time, groceries in the fridge, sanity mostly intact in them, still trying to suck me back in like I was the last life preserver on a sinking ship. If you're reading this and wondering how I ended up in this mess, how a 29-year-old data analyst like me ended up being the human version of Venmo for a family who never really saw me unless they needed something, welcome to the show. Name's Mira Carter. And if you've ever been the responsible one, the one who paid their way through college, held down jobs since they were 16, never asked for a dime, you'll probably understand exactly how I got here. It starts with being the good one. Growing up, I was the kid who didn't make waves. I got good grades, never missed curfew, and pretty much taught myself how to fill out FAFSA forms while my parents were busy binge watching true crime. Meanwhile, my older brother, Noah, he was a full-time disaster wrapped in a hoodie. He flunked out of college before his second year, crashed my dad's car while finding himself, and had a new career dream every 3 months. Retail, film school, crypto trader, you name it, he failed at it. But our parents, oh, they adored him. They clapped for every mess he made like he was inventing modern art. Mom would say, "He just needs time. Dad, he's figuring it out." And me, I got a pat on the back when I landed my first internship. Literally, a pat, no hug, no dinner, just a nod, and that's nice. It wasn't abusive, not in the way you usually think. It was quieter than that. Calculated. Love in our house came with strings. You had to earn it. And even when you did, someone else usually got the credit. Still, I tried. For years, I paid my own way through college by juggling tutoring gigs, midnight food delivery, and surviving on cup noodles. Graduated debt-free, got a stable job in a tech firm, moved into my first shared apartment. Life was hard, but mine. Then came the just this once calls. "Hey Mira, we're a little behind on the power bill." "Sweetheart, the fridge is empty. Could you swing by? We forgot about the mortgage this month. It's just temporary, okay?" And every time I said yes, because it was easier than arguing, because I felt guilty saying no, because somehow I believed that helping meant I was being a good daughter. But just this once became every month, then every week. Then my whole paycheck started vanishing into a house I didn't even live in, while Noah sat on the couch all day, controller in hand, ordering takeout with my money like he was doing us all a favor. I never asked them for help, ever, but I became their safety net anyway, quietly, reluctantly, resentfully. Noah didn't lift a finger, not to get a job, not to pay rent, not to apologize. He just took. And when I started pulling away, they noticed. Not with concern, with complaints. They started saying I was selfish, that I was acting different, that I thought I was better than the family. And maybe I did. Maybe being the only adult in a house full of grown children made me see things for what they were. So 6 months ago, I stopped answering. I moved out. I changed addresses, blocked their group chat, and started living for myself. I stopped doing their grocery shopping, stopped sending bank transfers, stopped being available at all hours to solve problems I didn't create. It was like detoxing from an addiction. Rough at first, guilt-ridden, quiet. But then one day, I woke up and realized something wild. I was okay, better than okay. I wasn't angry all the time. I wasn't crying in parking lots or yelling into pillows. I was just breathing. Then today happened. My phone lit up like a haunted Christmas tree. Dad's message popped up first. "Why haven't you paid the mortgage this month?" Not hello, not hope you're doing okay, just a demand. Like nothing had changed. I stared at the screen, let out a breath so long it felt like exhaling the last 5 years of my life. Then I replied, "Oh? I thought I wasn't welcome anymore." I hit send and leaned back, watching the chaos unfold like a spectator at a fireworks show. The calls started within seconds. Mom, Dad, Noah, pleading, guilt-tripping, accusing. But here's the thing, I wasn't shaking anymore. I wasn't tempted to fix it. I was curious. What had they actually done with the money I sent all those months? I called the bank, put on my polite voice, and asked about the mortgage status. The rep was nice. She pulled up the account, then paused. "Ma'am, it appears this mortgage has been delinquent for almost 8 months. I blinked. Wait, what? I was still sending payments 6 months ago. I understand, she said. But the last full payment was nearly 8 months ago, and that's when I realized they'd been pocketing my money, letting the house slip while I kept bleeding cash, thinking I was helping. I hung up and just laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was pathetic, predictable, perfect. They weren't just depending on me, they were lying to me. And now the well had dried up. So yeah, they were panicking. And me? I was just getting started. I didn't call them back right away. I let the panic marinate. The messages kept coming, piling up like junk mail from a store I never shopped at. My phone was a mess of buzzing desperation. Mom alternating between guilt and threats. Dad with his were a family routine. And Noah tossing out whatever weak excuse he could manage. I wasn't surprised. That was their rhythm. Mess up, beg, manipulate, repeat. What caught me off guard, though, was just how calm I felt. Like something had finally clicked into place, and all the noise couldn't reach me anymore. They'd lied. For nearly a year, they'd let that house fall into delinquency while I paid what I thought was keeping them afloat. And when it all hit the fan, they didn't confess. They didn't come clean. They demanded more. So I called Noah, not to reconnect, just to see how far down the rabbit hole he'd let himself go. He picked up fast, voice tight. "Mira, seriously, we need you to pay this month. It's not a game." I skipped the niceties. "Did you know the mortgage hasn't been paid in 8 months? Silence. Then a nervous laugh. "That's not what they told me." I rolled my eyes so hard, I thought I might sprain something. "You live there, Noah. You didn't notice final notices showing up? Bank calls? Anything?" He made this irritated sound like I was the problem here. "I don't go through their mail, all right? I didn't think it was my job to check what they were doing. They told me you were handling it." That was the line, wasn't it? "Mira will handle it. Mira always does." I hung up before he could spin it any further. I had heard enough. He wasn't clueless, he just didn't care. Not as long as someone else covered the fallout. I sat on my kitchen stool, the light from the small window pooling on the floor like the only peaceful thing in the room. And I made a decision. Not a petty one, not angry, just final. They wanted me to pay? Fine. I'd pay attention. I pulled out my laptop and logged into every account I'd used to help them: utilities, grocery delivery, even a gas card I'd foolishly co-signed. I wanted to see how deep the hole was. And let me tell you, it wasn't just a hole. It was a crater. Overdrafts, late fees, missed payments, stacked like forgotten promises. I'd been patching the roof with duct tape while they lit fires in the basement. I clicked through each transaction with a numb kind of awe, realizing just how much they'd bled from me without once asking if I could afford it. And truthfully, I couldn't. I'd been stretching. Canceling plans, eating ramen 3 nights a week, putting off my own dentist visits because they always just needed a little help. That's the part that stung the most. Not the money, not even the lies. It was knowing that while I was choosing between rent and groceries, they were pretending everything was fine, pretending I owed them this. I made a spreadsheet, a full one, labeled everything they borrowed since I turned 22. It was 5 figures, easily, and that was me being conservative. I tallied it all: mortgage payments, electric bills, random cash transfers with guilt-drenched subject lines like "thanks again, sweetheart." Looking at it all laid out like that, I felt this mix of heartbreak and something sharper, like grief with teeth. They weren't just bad with money. They were good at using me, and I'd let them. I'd handed them the tools to bleed me dry. That night, I got another text from Dad. "Mira, please. We're about to lose the house. You know what that means?" I didn't answer. I just reread it. Because that last line, that's what they always did. Frame the consequences like I'd be the one who caused them. Like if the house slipped into foreclosure, it would be my fault for not stepping in. Never mind that they ignored the bank. Never mind that they spent the money elsewhere. The fault was always mine for drawing a boundary. The next morning, I drove past the house. I didn't stop. I didn't even slow down. But I needed to see it one last time while it was still theirs. It looked smaller than I remembered. Not in size, just in meaning. That house used to carry every version of my childhood. Every school night, every summer fight, every early morning where I tiptoed around Noah's sleeping in because he needed his rest. But now, all I saw was 4 walls built on guilt and imbalance. The curtains were drawn, the driveway empty. It felt like a tomb, not a home. And for the first time, I didn't feel bad. I felt nothing. Back at my place, I did something I hadn't done in years. I took a day off work just for me. No errands, no calls, no productivity, just rest. I lay on the couch with a bowl of cereal I didn't have to share and watched mindless TV. with the kind of peace that makes you realize how little of it you've had. My phone buzzed again. I ignored it. Eventually, the voicemail icon blinked, and curiosity won. It was Mom, her voice cracking. "Mira, please call us. We need to talk. This isn't like you." That last part made me laugh out loud. This is exactly like me. The real me. The one they didn't recognize because she didn't fold. But fine, I thought. Let's talk. I called her back. She answered on the first ring. "Mira, thank God, we need help." I cut in before she could launch into a script. "You've needed help for years, Mom." I gave it. And it wasn't enough. It was never going to be. She didn't respond right away. Just a quiet inhale, like she knew where this was going. "We didn't mean to hurt you. We just thought," "No," I said, calm as a still lake. "You thought I wouldn't stop. That you could keep asking and I'd keep showing up. And you were right for a while." Her voice wavered. "It's your family, Mira. We're not perfect, but..." I didn't let her finish. "You're not just imperfect. You're careless. You gambled with my money and my trust and didn't even flinch." I heard a sniff on the other end. "We're gonna lose everything." I looked around my apartment, modest, clean, mine. "So did I whispered. "And no one showed up for me." She started crying then. Real crying. And for a moment, I felt that old pull, the need to fix, to comfort, to make it all okay. But I didn't move, because I was finally learning that guilt and love aren't the same thing. And helping people who refuse to help themselves isn't noble. It's self-destruction with a smile. I ended the call gently. Not with anger, not even with a slam of finality, just truth. "I hope you figure it out, Mom, but I can't do this anymore. I won't." She didn't argue, she just cried harder. And I pressed end. It took me hours to process it. I walked around the block twice, made dinner I didn't eat, stared at old photos I'd tucked in a shoebox years ago. There was one of all four of us at the lake. Noah's arm slung around my shoulders, both of us squinting in the sun. I looked happy, but looking closer, I realized I wasn't. I looked like someone pretending very hard to feel included. That photo was a lie, just like the story they'd been selling me my whole life. So I took it out and I let it go. They say healing isn't linear. That sometimes it feels like walking in circles until something finally clicks. I don't know if I'm healed yet, but I know I'm no longer circling them. That orbit broke the day I chose peace over performance. And I have no plans of going back. The next few days were quieter, but not silent. I could tell they were regrouping, trying to figure out a new angle. That's how they worked push until the door locks, then knock with a smile. The voicemail shifted from panic to nostalgia, like memories could double as currency. "Remember Christmas at Aunt Rachel's?" Dad said in one. "You were the only one who liked her fruitcake." Then another from Mom, her voice softer than I'd heard in years, saying, "I miss our talks. You always had the best advice." It would have been sweet if I didn't know exactly what came next. That's the thing about manipulative people. They don't apologize, they rebrand. They test new scripts until one gets a response. I didn't give them one. Instead, I did what I hadn't done in a long time. I focused on my life. Not the kind of fake focus where you keep one eye on your phone in case someone needs you. Real focus. The kind where your mind isn't divided between your own peace and someone else's problems. I started sleeping better. My meals didn't come from stress eating over a laptop. I took walks without my phone. I signed up for a yoga class I'd been eyeing for months and actually showed up. The weight that had been pressing on my chest for years had finally lifted, and the air felt different, not lighter reeler. Like I'd been breathing through someone else's filter, and just now remembered what oxygen was supposed to feel like. But that peace didn't last long. Not when I checked the mail one afternoon and found a manila envelope from the county clerk's office. No return address, just my name in crooked handwriting. I opened it on the spot. Inside was a notice my parents' house had entered pre-foreclosure. A copy of the bank's final warning was attached, dated 2 weeks ago. The kicker? It was addressed to me. Not just occupant. Me. My name listed as the responsible party on a co-signed loan I didn't remember agreeing to. I stood there frozen, hands shaking, the paper rustling with every heartbeat. They had added me to the loan. Without my knowledge, without permission. I went straight to the bank, marched in, slapped the letter on the desk, and demanded answers. The teller blinked at me, then called over a manager. After a few taps on the keyboard and a couple of too polite apologies, I had my answer. 4 years ago, when the mortgage was refinanced, my parents claimed I had co-signed. Apparently, someone signed my name. A digital signature. Forged. No doubt about it. They'd used my credit, my name, my trust without a word. My jaw locked so tight I thought something might snap. I asked the manager what it would take to have my name removed. She looked at me with that tired sympathy people save for lost causes. You'd need to prove fraud, legal action. identity verification. It's not impossible, but it won't be quick. I walked out in a daze, head spinning, phone buzzing again. This time I picked up. I didn't plan to, but my thumb moved before I could stop it. It was Dad. His voice was calm, like he'd been rehearsing. "Mira, we were going to tell you. Things got complicated." I kept walking, wind slicing through my coat, heat rising behind my eyes. "You forged my name. Do you even hear yourself?" He had the nerve to sigh. "It's not as bad as you think. We thought you'd be okay with it since you were already helping." I stopped walking. Just stood there in the middle of the sidewalk, people brushing past me like I didn't exist. "You thought I'd be okay with fraud?" His tone hardened. "It's not fraud, it's family. We needed help." That word again. Needed. Like their choices were emergencies, and my existence was a fire extinguisher. I laughed, low and humorless. "You didn't need help. You needed a scapegoat. A free safety net with a decent credit score." He didn't deny it, didn't even flinch. That told me everything I needed to know. I hung up, walked the rest of the way home in silence, and sat in my car for 20 full minutes before going inside. I wasn't even angry. Anger would have been too generous. What I felt was betrayal buried under layers of exhaustion. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about ownership. They didn't just want my help. They wanted my life under their control. And I was done handing it over piece by piece. That night, I started gathering proof. Every transfer, every email, every favor documented and time-stamped. I reached out to a lawyer a friend had recommended months ago for something unrelated. She listened, took notes, and said calmly, "We'll start with a credit freeze. Then we dispute the signature and request full documentation of the refinance." Her voice was clear, certain, like a lighthouse cutting through the fog. For the first time, I felt like maybe I wasn't crazy. That maybe someone would see this mess for what it was, a quiet kind of theft dressed up as love. I slept better that night than I had in weeks. By the weekend, the calls had escalated. This time, it wasn't begging. It was guilt with teeth. "You're breaking this family apart," Mom texted. "Do you want us to lose everything?" And from Noah, my favorite line yet, "You're acting like a stranger." I didn't reply, but I thought about it, how funny it was that the moment I stopped giving, I became foreign. As if the real me only existed when I was useful. I realized they never really knew me. They just knew the version that didn't say no. Sunday morning, I got a knock at my door. I froze. No one came over uninvited. Not to this apartment. I peeked through the peephole and saw my father standing there, dressed like he was coming from church, even though I knew they hadn't been in years. I didn't open the door. I didn't even breathe. He waited for a while, then slipped an envelope under the door and left. Inside was a letter, handwritten. It wasn't an apology. It was a confession, laced with self-pity. He wrote about being desperate, about how hard it was to keep the family afloat, how much pressure he'd felt, how he didn't mean to drag me into it but was out of options. I read it twice, trying to find a single line where he took responsibility. There wasn't one. Every sentence pointed back at me. How strong I was, how capable, how it made sense to rely on me. I ripped it in half and dropped it in the trash. They weren't going to stop, not unless I made them. So I took the next step. I filed a police report for identity fraud. I emailed the bank, the mortgage company, and requested full documentation under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. And then I blocked every number that had called me in the last 2 weeks. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. And that was more dangerous than any explosion. Because now, I wasn't just leaving. I was closing the door behind me, locking it, and sealing the cracks. They thought they could wear me down with guilt. But they forgot. I didn't break when they used me. I broke when I finally saw them for who they really were. And once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. By the time Monday rolled around, I'd filed every form my lawyer recommended, and my name was officially under investigation for fraudulent attachment to the mortgage. I knew it would take time, that it wouldn't be an overnight fix, but something shifted when I dropped off that paperwork. I walked out of that courthouse taller, like every step finally had weight that was mine, not carried for someone else. It was strange, this feeling of moving forward while they stayed stuck. But it wasn't satisfaction. Not yet. It was something quieter, more grounded, like stepping out of a burning house and smelling real air for the first time in years. The silence from them didn't last long. Blocking them on my phone didn't mean they couldn't find other ways. They started emailing. Then the Facebook messages came, even LinkedIn, which almost made me laugh. Dad's message there read, "Please, let's be civil. We need to resolve this with grace. Grace." After they forged my name, drained my money, lied to my face for months, and still never said the word sorry. It was always, "We didn't mean to, you're strong, we needed help." I didn't respond. They weren't asking for grace. They were asking for another chance to dig their fingers back in, but I was already gone. Emotionally, mentally, legally, I was out. And the next step wasn't just about protection anymore. It was about closure. So I took the evidence I'd gathered, the digital trail of transactions, the bank confirmations, the statement from my lawyer, and put it all in a folder. Not for them, for me. A record of what had really happened, so I never again doubted that leaving was the right choice. 2 days later, I got a call from the bank's legal department. They'd completed their review. The signature didn't match my ID. The timestamps didn't align with my location history. Their tone was firm, but cautious. We're escalating this to the fraud division. You may be contacted for further verification. I thanked them, hung up, and stared at my wall for a long minute. This wasn't just some personal fight anymore. This was official. This was the system catching up to what I already knew. And somehow, that made it real in a new way. They had committed fraud. They had betrayed me on paper, not just in spirit. And now there were consequences. The next day, I ran into Noah, not planned. I was coming out of a cafe downtown, coffee in hand, when I saw him leaning against a bus stop pole like he had nowhere better to be. Which was probably true. He looked thinner, angrier, like life hadn't been cooperating lately. He spotted me and walked over like nothing had happened. "Hey," he said, trying to sound casual, "you've been hard to reach." I kept my expression neutral, my hand steady on my cup. "I'm not interested in talking, Noah." He stepped closer, voice low. "They're scared, Mira. They're talking about bankruptcy, about selling the house." I shrugged. Maybe they should have thought of that before they stole from me. He scoffed, like I was the one being dramatic. They didn't steal, they panicked. It's not the same. I turned to him then, meeting his eyes. They lied, forged a federal document, and used my money for nearly a year without telling me. What word would you use? He opened his mouth, then shut it. He had nothing. I walked past him without another word. That night, the emails changed tone again. Mom sent one with the subject line "heartbroken." Inside, a wall of text that twisted itself into a knot of half apologies and emotional bait. She wrote about my childhood, about how she remembered holding me as a baby, how proud she was of me for being so smart, so reliable, so mature, and then without a blink, pivoted to how ashamed she was that I was letting something like this destroy our family. I read it twice. Once with curiosity, then again with anger. Not because of what she said, but because she still didn't get it. I wasn't breaking the family, I was just stunned pretending it hadn't already been broken for years. And I wasn't going to glue it back together with my bank account anymore. A week passed, and the house officially hit the foreclosure list. Public record. I found it on a real estate site, listed as pending trustee sale. That was when the messages really ramped up. They emailed again, this time with a simple question. "Will you please meet us?" I said yes. Not because I wanted to reconcile, because I wanted to hear them say it. To finally face me with the truth. We met at a diner halfway between their place and mine. Neutral ground. I got there first, ordered tea, waited 10 minutes before they arrived. Mom looked tired in a way that couldn't be covered with makeup. Dad looked older than I remembered. I didn't feel sorry for them. I felt distant, like watching two people I used to know pretend they didn't cause a collapse they built brick by brick. They sat down, and for a few seconds, no one spoke. Then Mom leaned forward. "We made a mistake." My eyebrows lifted slightly. "Which one?" Dad jumped in, voice too calm. "We shouldn't have used your name. But we were drowning, Mira. We thought we could fix it before you noticed." That right there, that assumption. That I wouldn't notice. That I'd keep paying blindly, forever if needed. "You didn't even ask," I said. "You didn't give me a chance to say no." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "We were scared." I nodded slowly. "And instead of asking for help, you stole it. Do you know what that makes you?" Dad's mouth tightened. "Don't say that. We're still your parents." I sipped my tea. Parents protect their kids. You gambled with mine. They went quiet again, and for a moment, I thought they'd finally just listen. But of course, they didn't. Mom reached into her purse, pulled out a stack of papers. "We're selling the house. It's happening, but we need to pay off some back taxes. If you could just cover this last part." I laughed. Not loudly, not cruelly. Just that short, stunned laugh you let out when someone hands you the shovel they use to bury you and asks if you'll help them dig out. I pushed the papers back across the table. No. That was it. One word. The one they were never used to hearing from me. They didn't cry. They didn't scream. They just looked at me like they finally realized the answer wasn't coming, that the well was dry. That Mira, the dependable daughter, the walking bailout plan, had left the building. For good. I stood up, left a 5 on the table for my tea, and walked out without looking back. After that meeting at the diner, everything changed, not for them, but for me. It was like something inside me finally settled. Like all the noise that had lived in the back of my head for years just stopped. No more what ifs, no more hoping they'd wake up and see what they'd done. No more waiting for people who were never coming to their senses. I didn't leave angry, I left clean. And that silence? That stillness? It felt like power, not the loud kind that needs attention, but the quiet kind that comes from knowing you don't owe anyone anything they've already taken 10 times over. They didn't message me again after that night, not for a few days. I think they were still hoping I'd change my mind, that guilt would seep back in and convince me to do what I always did, but I didn't. I went to work. I came home. I lived. For the first time, my life wasn't a balancing act between my own needs and their emergencies. I wasn't patching holes I didn't make or rearranging my days to fix someone else's chaos. I was just existing. On my terms, no buzzing phone, no emotionally loaded errands, just peace. But the thing about peace is that it feels unfamiliar when you've lived without it for so long. The first week, I kept reaching for my phone out of habit, expecting some crisis to explode. When nothing did, I'd get this weird echo of panic, like I'd forgotten something huge, but it was just silence. My therapist once told me that trauma doesn't always show up as fear. Sometimes it's restlessness. Like your brain's convinced calm is just the eye of the storm. That's how it felt like waiting for a lightning strike that never came. But slowly, that feeling began to fade. Not all at once, but in pieces. I'd cook dinner without checking my messages every 5 minutes. I'd sleep through the night without waking up to a vibrating phone on my nightstand. I'd walk past the bank without flinching. It wasn't healing exactly. It was more like unlearning. And that takes time. Then the real fallout began. It started small. A neighbor from my parents' street messaged me on Instagram. We'd never really spoken, but she wrote, "Hey, I saw the for sale sign. I'm so sorry about your family situation. Your mom said you moved away." I didn't reply. I just stared at the message, fingers hovering over the screen. Not because I didn't know what to say, because I realized what they were doing. Spinning the story, painting me as the one who disappeared, as if they hadn't pushed me out with a ledger of debts and a forged signature. It wasn't shocking, it was just predictable. I blocked the account and moved on. A few days later, my cousin messaged. Same tone, different flavor. "Hey, just checking in. Your mom said you two are having a rough patch. Hope things get better." A rough patch. That's what they were calling it. Like I'd argued over curfew, not filed a fraud report, and walked away from years of unpaid emotional labor. I ignored that one too. Then came the pity posts. Mom shared a vague Facebook status. Sometimes the ones you love the most hurt you in ways you never imagined. But family is forever, even when it's hard. I saw it through a mutual friend's account. I didn't even feel mad, just tired. Tired of being the villain in a play I didn't audition for. Tired of their dramatics dressed up as devotion. And mostly tired of people falling for it. But then again, maybe that was their only option. They couldn't admit what really happened. Not to themselves, not to anyone. So they wrapped it up in something digestible, something sympathetic. I let them, because defending myself to people who only ever knew one side of me, the version filtered through my mother's tears, and my father's silence, wasn't my job anymore. I didn't need to correct the record. I just needed to live in a way that made their story irrelevant. Meanwhile, my lawyer followed up. The fraud case was progressing. Slowly, but in the right direction. They'd confirmed that my signature was forged, that the refinance paperwork had been processed without proper consent. The next step was a court hearing. My presence wasn't required yet, but my statement was. I spent an entire Sunday drafting it, line by line. Not just facts, but history. I didn't just explain what they did, I explained the pattern. How every dollar I sent was just a thread in a much bigger web. How the house was a metaphor for every time I'd sacrifice something and watch them throw it away. My lawyer called me the next day and said, "You nailed it. This isn't just a financial issue, it's a story of exploitation." And it's clear, that word stuck with me, exploitation. I'd never said it out loud, but it was right. They didn't just use me, they structured their lives around using me. Every time I showed up, they expected it the next time. Every time I paid, they planned on it again. It wasn't a fluke, it was a system. And when I walked away, the system collapsed. That wasn't my failure. That was proof of how deep the rot went. 2 weeks after the court filing, Noah messaged me again. Not an apology, a rant. "You're really dragging this into court? You're blowing everything up over what? A signature? Do you know what this is doing to Mom?" I stared at the message, rereading it slowly. Then I typed out one line. Mom had time to worry about consequences before she committed a crime. And then I blocked him. Again, this time for good. I didn't need his voice in my ear, pretending this was mutual damage. It wasn't. They burned the house down. I just stopped showing up with buckets. Around that time, something strange happened. I started feeling things again. Not the numb weight of responsibility or the electric buzz of anxiety. Real things. Joy. Rest. I got coffee with a friend I hadn't seen in months. We laughed. I didn't check my phone once. I took a weekend trip out of the city, stayed at a cabin with no cell service, and didn't miss a thing. I looked in the mirror and didn't see someone broken. I saw someone rebuilding. Not starting over, starting right. From the ground up. No expectations, no manipulation. Just me, in control of the story. One evening, I walked past a thrift shop and saw a framed photo in the window. A painting, really. Simple. A house on a hill, tiny and weathered, but with sunlight pouring over it like forgiveness. I bought it, took it home, hung it in my hallway. It reminded me that homes aren't where you were raised. Homes are where you feel safe. And for the first time in my life, I'd built one. The court date came faster than I expected, even though I'd been counting the days. It wasn't a big trial, no jury or dramatic scenes, just a hearing in a small courtroom with beige walls and the kind of chairs that squeak if you breathe wrong. I sat beside my lawyer while she walked the judge through every document, every transaction, every signature that wasn't mine. Across the room sat my parents. I hadn't seen them in person since the diner. Mom avoided my eyes the whole time, focused on a crumpled tissue in her lap like it held the answers. Dad looked smaller than I remembered, not physically, just diminished, like something inside him had finally collapsed. They didn't speak, their lawyer did. Tried to downplay the misunderstanding, called it a lapse in communication, even floated the idea that maybe I had signed and just forgot. That was the moment I felt the heat rise up my neck. Not anger, just disbelief. Even now, even under oath, they still wouldn't own it. Still couldn't admit what they'd done because the story they needed to believe, the one where I was overreacting and they were well-meaning parents doing their best, was safer than the truth. But the judge saw through it. She looked at the evidence, asked a few quiet questions, then said the words I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath for. This signature is fraudulent. Miss Carter will be removed from all legal and financial responsibility related to the mortgage effective immediately. My chest didn't rise. It exhaled all the way. Years of tension released in a single line. Afterward, I walked out of the courtroom without speaking to them. They didn't follow. I think by then, they knew there was nothing left to say. I stood outside on the courthouse steps, letting the breeze hit my face, and for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't tied to them in any legal, financial, or emotional way. They didn't own me, and I no longer owed them a single thing. That night, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, watching the city lights flicker like quiet promises. No phone buzzing, no dread hanging over my head, just stillness. And I realized that peace isn't loud. It doesn't shout to be noticed. It whispers. It's soft mornings where no one needs anything from you. Even softer nights where your name doesn't show up in someone else's list of expectations. It's knowing your life is finally yours. Entirely. A few weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. But I recognized the handwriting immediately. My mom's. Inside was a folded piece of paper, her cursive slightly shaky. She didn't apologize. Not really. But she wrote that she missed me, that the house had been sold, that they were living in a rental now, and things were hard. She wrote that she hoped I'd come visit someday, that she wanted things to go back to how they were. I sat with that letter for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't rip it up. I just stared at it, turning the words over in my head. How they were. That line echoed. And all I could think was, they really didn't understand. I never wanted things to go back, because back was where I gave everything and got silence in return. Back was where love had terms and guilt wore a mask of care. Back was where I paid for peace I never received. So I didn't write back. Not because I hated them, but because sometimes silence is the most honest answer. Sometimes not responding is the only way to say, I'm not that version of me anymore, and I won't ever be again. Life went on. I got a promotion at work a few months later. It wasn't flashy, but it meant more stability, more freedom. I moved to a slightly bigger apartment, still modest but mine. I started seeing someone, slowly, carefully. He didn't know the whole story at first. I kept it tucked away like a wound that had scabbed over but wasn't ready to scar yet. When I finally told him, he didn't interrupt, didn't judge, just listened. And that was enough. Maybe that's what healing looks like. Not dramatic shifts or some movie perfect redemption, but small, steady changes. Eating dinner without guilt, saying no without explaining, smiling without wondering who's about to ask for something. Every now and then, I think about them, not often. Just enough to remember what I walked away from. I wonder if they've told themselves a new story about me. Maybe that I was selfish, cold, ungrateful. Or maybe, just maybe they've started to see the truth, that I didn't cut them off out of anger. I let go because I was drowning, and they kept handing me weights. You can love people and still choose distance. You can forgive someone and still never let them back in. That is something they never understood. But I do. Now I do. I still keep that painting in my hallway, the one of the little house on the hill with the soft yellow light. It reminds me that homes aren't built from obligation. They're made with boundaries and respect, and the quiet belief that love doesn't require sacrifice to be real. I've created a life that doesn't revolve around damage control. A life that's mine in every sense of the word. It's not perfect, but it's honest. And that's more than I ever had with them. So here I am, telling you this story not because I need sympathy or validation, but because I know I'm not the only one. I know someone out there is still answering every call, transferring every dime, explaining themselves over and over while being called selfish for finally setting limits. Maybe you're that person. Maybe you've been the fixer, the quiet one, the backbone of a house that would collapse without you. If you are, let me say something I wish someone had told me sooner. You don't have to keep sacrificing yourself to prove your worth. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm, and walking away isn't cruel. Sometimes it's the kindest thing you'll ever do for yourself. I don't know what the future holds for my parents or for Noah. I don't spend energy on that anymore. I've learned that closure doesn't come from them admitting what they did. It comes from knowing I survived it. I outgrew it. And now I'm living proof that you can start over at 29 or 39 or 69. You can reclaim your story at any point. All it takes is one moment where you choose yourself. I thought that moment for me was when I walked out of their house. But really, it came later, in the quiet, in the weeks that followed. In the steady pulse of a life where no one else gets to write my name on things I never agreed to. So this is where it ends. Or maybe this is where it truly begins. Me, Mira Carter, no longer the fixer, no longer the fallback, no longer the quiet good girl holding everyone else up. Just a woman who said enough, meant it, and built a life from that line in the sand. And if you're still reading this, maybe you needed to hear it too. Maybe you're ready to draw your own line. If so, I hope you do. And when you step over it, I hope you feel what I did, freedom so deep, it feels like silence. And in that silence, I hope you remember who you were before they made you forget. Story 2. Instead of the stale scent of loneliness, Christmas Eve should smell of cinnamon and pine. I was 32 years old and sprawled on the floor of my bedroom in a paid-for apartment in Chicago when my phone buzzed with a message that made my heart sink. I appreciate you being here. Don't come. My father's words gleamed on the screen, sharp as a razor. I gazed, hoping they might soften, blur, or convey a less harsh meaning. Outside, the city was covered in snow, and the walls were laced with the sounds of faraway holiday parties. But I was an alien in my own life, bound to a family that had already rejected me, here in the dull glow of dollar store string lights. My shoulders ached from the strain of their demands, which I had been bearing for 18 months. To maintain the flat we shared, $200 a month in rent is deducted from my account, $200 for utilities, because my sister Emily promised to reimburse me when her next job was offered, $500 for groceries. Without saying thank you, she stocked the refrigerator she raided. The steady one was me, the person who sold my old gaming system to pay off her college loans and put in extra hours at a soul-crushing office job. The family's favorite was Emily, who was 30 years old and 2 years younger. His creative energy was pardoned by her disarray. I didn't voice any complaints. I take it that family doesn't keep score? But all I could see that night was the scoreboard. Emily had been standing in the kitchen, flinging her coat over her shoulder like a movie star, hours before her father texted her. She looked at her reflection in the microwave door, her blonde locks catching the light. She was going to our parents' place for supper on Christmas Eve, which I had been tactfully excluded from for months. She paused at the door and remarked, "Oh, by the way, I informed Mom and Dad that you're just crashing on the couch if they ask. Since your name isn't on the lease, you know." She seemed to be making a casual remark about the weather in her tone. The sponge slipped from my hands as they froze in the soapy dishwasher. "That's what you told them?" My voice was calm yet quiet as I asked. She flicked a hair and rolled her eyes. "Calm down, Claire. It's not really important. Simply put, I didn't want anyone to believe that I was giving you free housing. It's easier this way." The sister I had supported through job losses and late-night sob tales, whose rent I covered while she purchased new boots, was the one I gazed at. However, I pay the rent. Every word I spoke was intentional. Emily gave a shrug. "I'm almost out the door already." "Yes, well, that's not necessary for them to know." I was left with the sound of the refrigerator and the burden of her deception as the door snapped shut. I slid onto a kitchen chair and wiped my hands, the towel quivering in my palms. Like the ties I had been holding on to, the string lights flickered, cheap and brittle. I was sitting cross-legged on the floor, looking through old pictures to remind myself what family was like, when Dad texted me at approximately 9 o'clock in the evening. Just 6 words. No justification. Just one last rejection seal. At the dinner table, I pictured them. Dad is slicing the ham. Without me, their laughing was full and loving as Mom fussed over Emily. For years, I had been losing interest in their narrative, but this time was different. The door was slammed shut. I pressed the respond button with my thumb, but nothing appeared. How do you respond when a family wants you to stay away after thanking you for being there? I put the phone down. The illumination on the screen fades to black. Let the stillness fall. There was no peace. Not quite yet. It was the pain of a reality I had been trying to avoid. People who had already determined that I didn't belong were paying for me. The clock in the kitchen was beyond midnight. In contrast to the quiet that had engulfed me since Dad's text, its rhythm was a slight pulse. The dollar store lights were creating weak shadows on the linoleum as I sat at the table. My mind is a maze of unanswered questions. How long had they not been able to see me? I would pour myself into their nothingness for how many more years? The apartment. I felt more weighed down than ever by my cage of responsibility. All the floorboards squeak, a reminder that I paid the rent, the life I had given up. Then there was a snap, clear but not loud, like an overextended string. I moved with a purpose I hadn't had in months as I stood there, my chair slapping the floor. Buried between jackets and abandoned umbrellas in the hallway closet was a toolbox I had purchased for a shelf I never constructed. Now, I curled my firm palms around its corroded handle. I knelt beside the front door, the cold metal of the lock glinting under the light bulb, the weight of it grounding me. Every screwdriver turn was a decision, a severance for every click. I worked quietly. My neck was drenched in sweat until the old lock came off, and it was replaced by another. No reluctance, no shame. The silent excitement of taking back what was rightfully mine. The apartment seemed lighter after I finished, as though it had released a weight I had been carrying for too long, and I leaned against the door. I climbed into bed, slept deeper than I had in years, and felt the cold blankets on my skin. I was awakened at 8:17 a.m. by the sound of fumbling keys. A scratch, a curse, then a silence. Emily had returned. Her fists hammered, each thud a last-ditch appeal that I no longer owed her, and the new lock remained tight. I remained still. I listened as the thumping slowed and ultimately ceased without flinching. Sharper silence came back, mine to preserve. I got up, my bare feet feeling good on the floor, and got ready to evict her. Using paper I had saved for better times, I wrapped 2 boxes like Christmas presents and set them on the threshold. A medium-sized one held the earrings and scarf I had purchased for her, tied in a flawless bow. My final deed of generosity. The phone inside the second smaller one was set to vibrate with a looped alarm, and it hummed softly. Inside was a third box, plain and simple. In addition to a USB disc with audio snippets of her laughing at my credulity, there was a credit card bill in my name with $750 in expenditures she had made. There was a sticky note. Emotionally and physically, your contract is over. I felt the air change as I closed the door, the latch clicking finality. Now it wasn't just me in the flat, it was free. With the coffee mug warm in my hands, I stood in the kitchen warming it. I hadn't been shaken by the beating. I was cemented by it. Wrapped in the strength I'd forgotten I possessed, Emily's absence was a present I'd given myself. When she opened the parcels, I had no idea what she would do. However, I was aware of my actions. Drew a line, in steel instead of sand. Even though the string lights continued to flicker, they stopped making fun of me. I owned them. Such as this room, similar to my life. I actually believed it for the first time. By midday, the coffee was cold, but I still took a drink. While I sat by myself in the flat, the memories clawed their way up with a harsh sharpness. Something had been broken open by changing the locks. The truth, not just the door. After 18 months of devotion, I had been buried. It began modestly. An energy bill here, a food shop there. Emily promised that everything will be resolved shortly. Sisters believe what they say, so I trusted her. However, little turned into a flood, and her craziness was drowning me. My life is getting smaller to satisfy her demands. She danced through hers though, not touched. Emily's loss of her graphic design career was the first step, or give up. She never made sense. She had maintained it was just a hard time. Her eyes were wide, her voice gentle, the identical maneuver to avoid difficulties that she had mastered as a child. At my workstation, surrounded by spreadsheets and late-night emails, I took on more shifts at the workplace. I paid the $200 on each month while Emily browsed Instagram in preparation for her return. $200 for utilities. She neglected to transfer her half, so she hit my card. $500 for groceries. However, it filled our refrigerator. To make ends meet, I ate ramen. I sold my gaming console, my only source of income, to help pay off a portion of her $10 in student loan debt. I'll reimburse you. She put her hand on my arm and swore, but by morning she had broken her word. I sacrificed more than money, painting lessons and lake excursions. I even called off a date because Emily needed $300 for an urgent matter. It ended up being a music festival. It was only temporary, I told myself. That family remains together, but it has temporarily settled into a routine. Routine turned into duty, and duty turned into silence. I was unable to shatter. Emily was gifted with the ability to twist things. She became the victim because of her tears. I'm going cold, accountable to both parents. The dreamer was her shortcomings. Evidence of a sensitive soul. The rock was me, too grave to maintain, until steadiness became a verb. I stopped attending family dinners 6 months ago. They were all traps, not because I didn't love them. Over mashed potatoes, Mom's voice was sharp. Emily is simply having difficulties. Claire, why do you make things so difficult? Dad lets out a sigh. The stable one is you. She needs you. I nod, my smile a mask, my fork heavy. To be honest, I was exhausted. I'm sick of being the grown-up, the bank, the one who made the payment as they gave her praise. I take a car back to the city. I wonder when I will become a stranger in my own family, as the lights start to blur. 3 weeks before Christmas, I found the credit card statement, not mine, but in my name, opened with my ID and email, $750 in charges. A spa day, a tattoo at Ink and Needle, a Target haul. My heart pounded as I called the bank, their confirmation a gut punch. Emily's doing linked to her phone. I didn't confront her. I watched silent as she pranced through the apartment to new sneakers, her Apple Watch glinting, laughing on FaceTime about her idiot sister who never notices. I took screenshots, saved voicemails, and built a case in the shadows. She thought she'd won, but I was done being her pawn. That afternoon, as snow fell outside, I sat on my bed. The statement crumpled in my fist. Emily's lies weren't new, but their scale was. She hadn't just taken my money. She'd stolen my identity, my trust, my place. I'd been shrinking to fit their story. But the locks I changed were only the start. I wasn't just locking her out. I was locking myself into a life I'd fight for, no matter the cost. The afternoon sun slanted through the kitchen blinds, painting stripes across the linoleum. As I stood by the counter, the coffee pot hissing softly, the boxes I'd left on the doormat waited outside, their silent accusation heavier than the morning's calm. I'd locked Emily out, but the real confrontation loomed. A storm gathering in the pit of my stomach. Around 2 p.m., the door rattled. Not a knock, but a fist pounding like it meant to splinter wood. I set my mug down, its warmth fading, and braced myself. The air thickened, charged with the truth I was about to unleash. I opened the door slowly, and there stood Emily. Her blonde curls, tangled eyeliner smudged into dark crescents. She clutched the smaller box, its faint buzzing, a taunt in her trembling hands. "What is this, Claire?" she screamed, her voice cracking like thin ice. I tilted my head, calm as stone. "A Christmas gift," I said, my words deliberate, cutting. She tore it open, the wrapping paper shredding to reveal the credit card statement, $750 in her charges, and the USB drive labeled for Dad. Her eyes widened, but before she could speak, my phone rang. I answered on speaker, Dad's voice dominating the room. "Claire, what's happening on? Emily says you're bothering her. This is cruel." I laughed, a sound harsh enough to stun even myself. "Cruel? You mean like asking me not to come for Christmas?" Dad snapped. "That wasn't about you. You've been chilly isolating yourself." I cut him off, my voice firm. "You told me not to come, Dad. And you know what?" I listened. Emily's fingernails touched my wrist as she sprang for the phone. "She is insane, Dad." The locks were replaced by her. Holding the phone high, I withdrew. "Why don't you tell him what's in that box, Emily?" Her face drained of color, and silence descended heavy and oppressive. I connected the USB disk to a little speaker on the counter and hit play. Emily's voice was as clear as a bell when she spoke. It's quite easy to control her. She would still cover my phone bill even if I maxed out her card. Unquestionably, the words hung there. A blade twists in the room while her laughing is captured on tape. Emily stumbled. "That's not relevant." I raised an eyebrow. "What situation is identity theft in?" "All right." Dad didn't say anything, but his respiration crackled across the phone. He was unable to bear the weight of the truth. The tension was then relieved by a gentle knock. When I opened the door, I saw Mom behind her her coat covered in snow. Emily's former lover, Tom. Something more powerful than fury made his jaw rigid. Emily, Tom began, his voice low and shaky with anger. Today, I received a call. In my name, there were 2 Amazon orders and a hotel reservation. They insisted on payment. You did it. Emily's mouth opened, shut, and then opened once again. Why would I do that? Her gaze strayed to the USB, the box, and the speaker, which was still flashing red, even as she murmured. Tom took a step forward, staring into her eyes. I believe you ought to go. As if smacked, Emily blinked, shedding her typical tears. Not present. She lacked a script and charisma. Mom didn't say anything, but her face collapsed. No resistance could overpower her quiet. Emily's coat was thrown off the chair by me. Your belongings are by the garbage can in the hallway. Determine which is which. She didn't cry out or plead. She simply left. She walked down the corridor, her footsteps diminishing. A final note is ding from the elevators. I leaned against the door and closed it, the latch clicking softly. Like a lung taking its first deep breath, the apartment seemed spacious rather than empty. Tom gave me a nod. In his eyes, a silent partnership. I didn't give Mom any words, but she lingered, her hands twitching. There was a faint hum from the speaker. Emily's recorded chuckle. There is a ghost present. With evidence, not rage. I had disproved her lies, and the weight of that triumph weighed heavily on my bones. Their shadow had vanished. I was sufficient because I was Claire. I woke up to a Chicago dawn the morning after Emily left. My blinds are letting in gray light, which promises clarity. The quiet in the apartment was now a canvas rather than a void. And I was ready to paint my justice. I sat at the kitchen table. A binder opened before me, its pages crammed with bank statements, screenshots, and audio transcripts. Evidence of Emily's treachery, methodical. I collected my hands once, shaking with uncertainty, now moved with purpose as I labeled each paper. My pen scratched a silent revolt. By lunchtime, I'd filed a police report for identity theft. The officer's nod a modest affirmation of the conflict I'd been fighting alone. I found a lawyer by Wednesday. A woman called Karen with keen eyes and a no-nonsense voice. Her workplace smelled of leather and coffee, the loop skyline visible via her window. I pushed my binder across her desk, its weight a testament to 18 months of abuse. This isn't just about the $750 credit card, I remarked, my voice steady. She lived off me. Rent, utilities, emergency keys. My parents permitted it. Karen turned the pages of the book. She was frowning at the utility contracts that my parents co-signed without my permission. She leaned back and stated, "This is long-term financial exploitation. Every dime has been documented by you. It's a public case that we have." A week later, Grandma Evelyn called and my phone rang. Despite being 78 years old, her voice was strong. "I've seen your evidence, Claire," she replied. The static was broken by her remarks. "Emily's automobile was purchased by your father using $10,000 from a savings bond in your name. I've transferred the account to you and blocked what's left." The treachery grabbed my breath. A new injury. I was unaware of its existence, I muttered. She let out a sigh. "I've made changes to my will. You own my house. You'll fulfill it." Her confidence gave me an unexpected lifeline. 3 weeks later, the courtroom was a sterile box with polished wood and fluorescent lighting. Emily, wearing simple jeans, sat across from me. She lacked her typical flair, as though she were trying to win people over. Mom avoided looking at me when wearing black. Dad simply seemed exhausted. He drooped his shoulders. Karen meticulously presented the evidence. Bank records, audio of the stolen bond, faked utility contracts, and Emily's bragging. Emily tried, crying, practicing her cries. The judge, however, had a stony look. He remarked to his mother, Miss Thompson, "Did you uninvitedly put your daughter's name on financial records?" The silence was as tense as a wire. "Yes," she said in an almost audible voice. The decision was made quickly. My independence was sealed with a gavel crack, $15,000 as payment. The cancellation of all false debts covered our legal fees. Additionally, they have a formal warning on file. I let out a breath. As I entered the courthouse foyer with the snow blowing outside, I felt the weight of years lifting. Karen held my hand tightly as she shook it. "Claire, you didn't just win. Their story was rewritten by you." I gave the binder beneath my arm a nod. "Its pages are lighter now, a shield instead of a burden." That afternoon, the bank contacted to ensure that the $750 would be fully refunded. I reclined in my seat, listening to the bustle of the city outside my window, a triumphant song. With my boots solid on the ice, I made my way home through slushy streets. The flat waited. Its stillness was earned, not just merited. I had battled for the truth, not for retribution. And I was free because of the truth. Mom's cooperation and Emily's falsehoods. Dad's termination. I was free of their bonds. I wasn't their shadow. I was Claire. And that had been demonstrated in the courtroom. Although the war was not yet done, I was entitled to preserve the victory, a base upon which I was constructing my existence, one brick at a time. I was standing in my kitchen 3 days after the ruling. On the counter where my binder used to be, the lovely morning light fell. Tom woke beneath a duvet, still falling on my couch. In the new peace in the apartment, his snores create a soft beat. Since Emily's departure, he had not spoken much. Finally, there was silence before he was snatched away by sleep. I took a drink of my hot coffee. Like a riddle answered, the steam curls. I didn't feel bad. I have no regrets. Just a silence that suited me like a well-tailored jacket. The flat was transformed from a prison to a haven. Every murmur and groan is mine to treasure. A week later, a picture of us as children under a Christmas tree was sent with a note. Emily's handwriting clearly visible on the envelope. She put her little arms over my neck. Our grins caught my attention. She has faith in me. A painful recollection. I scribbled on the reverse. You held the picture over a flame and released your grip first. The picture curled to ash in the sink as the flame licked the edges. I flushed the leftovers down the sink. The rush of the water, a purification I had merited. Emily's effort at guilt was no longer able to affect me. I was past her tricks. Thawing months after spring. Chicago's cold hold. Not a single phone call, text message, or birthday card was sent by my parents. It was a gift of their quiet, removing the need for me to provide an explanation. I got my refrigerator open. All of my belongings are no longer shared with thieves. The couch, the skyline view, they were fresh. Not in appearance, but in the absence of expectations. An email from Emily's longtime friend Lena appeared on my computer in the afternoon of May 1. She lost her job once more. Her life was wrecked by you. I hovered my finger over it once and hit erase. To care was not to turn back. In June, I ran into Dad at a petrol station. The uneasy silence between us is filled with the buzz of the pumps. His hair was grayer and he appeared smaller. His justifications were exhausted. Claire, you look good. Eyes on the ground, he said. Is your mother still upset? You wrecked Christmas, they say. I arched an eyebrow. The irony? Sharp. It's funny. She began by saying, Don't come. I also paid attention. Gripping for words, he let out a groan. Families argue. Claire, it was Emily, not me, that you battled for. I waited for the stillness to respond. In my hand, my automobile keys feel chilly. The rearview mirror was vacant when I drove away. Like a long-held breath, calm descends into my chest. A item that was released 2 weeks ago came without the sender. Included a picture of myself and Emily's 6-year-old daughter Natalie from a previous year. At the age of 4, she was giggling on my shoulders while placing her hands on my cheeks and writing a red letter with a shaky crayon. I apologize for my mother's treatment of you. Natalie, thank you very much. As I drew her words, my eyes became blurry and tears started to pour. How she discovered me was a mystery to me. Perhaps Evelyn, perhaps luck. Her generosity, however, was a brightness I hadn't looked for. I kept the picture in a drawer as a memento rather than a link to suffering. Even when you go away, love survives. I'm not vindictive. My goal was to quit breaking myself, not to break my family. I paid the price for Emily's falsehoods, so they flourished. But their world fell apart when I quit. It was because I left, not because I destroyed it. This was not a kind of discipline. It was liberty. The type that results from putting yourself ahead of a system that exchanges debt for love. The evidence was Natalie's note. You don't stop loving when you go away. It indicates that you begin to love yourself more. Now, the stillness in my apartment is my hymn. Strong, unidentified, and all mine. Outside my window, the Chicago skyline glistened. A silent observer of the reality I had forged from the ruins of my family's deception. I'd learnt my lesson at age 32. More incisive than any sword. Love is not an enduring debt. I had devoted myself to Emily for years. Parents, thinking that devotion meant making sacrifices. That what I offered was what made me valuable. But their treachery, their rejection of Emily's thievery, demonstrated their love for me. I would shrink to suit their requirements, but I can't survive under those conditions. My identity was taken, and my goals postponed until I made my own decision. Burning that picture, changing the locks, and going to court with them. They were actions of survival rather than retaliation. I learned that leaving doesn't mean that love is lost from Natalie's message, and her tiny fingers piercing the agony. It takes it back for you. I am no longer the daughter pleading for a seat at their table or the shadow who paid their expenses. I'm Claire, and I maintain my boundaries by remaining silent. It is not a bitter lesson. It's glowing, Your soul is not owed to anyone. You must have the guts to live freely, to love with ferocity. First of all, you. Story 3. Golden light streams across the table from the chandelier above the dining room, glistening off the polished cutlery and crystal wine glasses that clatter too loudly in my ears. I stare at my father, Michael, across the spread of roasted lamb and uncooked asparagus, and my hands tighten under the tablecloth, out of sight, but my voice remains calm. What are you saying? Will Sophie be the business's owner? His knife slices into the steak with the dexterity of a man who has never questioned his power, and he doesn't even look up from his plate. He sighs. Let's be realistic, Aurora, as if he's trying to explain multiplication to a youngster who doesn't understand it. You're really good at coding systems and other technological things, but you're not good at leading. Someone with presence is what we need. Someone who is respected. It's preferable to choose your sister. In a stylish designer outfit that most likely cost more than my most recent software update, Sophie sat across from me. A faint, knowing grin curls her lips as she takes a sip of her wine. In the 3 years I've been pulling Bennett Industries back from the brink of collapse, she hasn't done a thing. Not one line of code, not one late night, not a single meeting with investors in a panic. Additionally, the business has just reported record-breaking earnings. My earnings. The keys are being given to her. My voice sharpens as I lean forward, slicing like a sword through the clinking cutlery. I created the software that kept this business afloat. You wouldn't even have a business to inherit without it. The low, condescending sound of Michael's laughter makes my skin crawl for your attempt. Reaching inside his pocket, he says. He reaches inside his wallet, finds a crumpled $50 note, and throws it on the table. It falls between my untouched wine glass and my plate. Like a waitress's tip, wrinkled and pitiful. They've already forgotten about him. $50. I've been squatting over my laptop for years, writing code till my eyes burned and my fingers hurt during the sleepless periods. I conducted a financial loss analysis and created a strategy that not only helped us escape bankruptcy, but also propelled us to the forefront of the logistics sector. $50 for the invention that made Bennett Industries a $300 million powerhouse instead of a decaying relic. Mom's eyes flash to me with that familiar flicker of uneasiness as she shifts in her seat. She doesn't say anything, though. Nobody does. I turn to face Michael, the man I looked up to as a child. I've dedicated my life to making this man proud. And something clicks at that precise instant. Merit, effort, achievement, or even devotion have never been the focus. It has to do with control. I understand. To my fingertips, I whisper quieter than I mean. I wrap the $50 note neatly inside my napkin after closing it and flipping it over one or twice. I then scrape my chair on the hardwood floor. Aurora. Michael scoffs, raising a hand as if he were shooing a fly. Don't be dramatic. I have a sharp, narrow grin. I'm not exaggerating. I'm simply making an excuse. It is obvious that I am only a supporting player in this household, so I'm going to leave the scene. Sophie laughs softly, her laughter scarcely disguised. Aurora, oh, Aurora. Mom begins Aurora, but as I leave the dining room, I can already feel my heels clicking on the marble floor. I don't shut the door abruptly. I don't shout. I don't expect justice. The sound of my footsteps is more audible than any words I could have said. As I enter Bennett Industries via the glass doors, the foyer is bustling with activity. My luggage swung across my shoulder the following morning. This location was a graveyard a year ago. Rumors of layoffs. Department leaders leaving before the collapse could completely engulf them. It is now flourishing, alive with the clatter of keyboards and the hum of new hires. Due to me, weeks of work were reduced to minutes by my program. We were invincible due to our secured international business. Nevertheless, I noticed something strange as I passed past. People stop talking when I go by. Too fast, eyes shrink away. The doors open when I arrive at my office, the corner suite I battled for. My desk is completely barren inside. The computer is gone. No files are present. There was no sign of the nameplate that stated Aurora Bennett. CTO Sophie crosses her legs and sits in my chair, looking through a pile of papers with the easy demeanor of someone who has already asserted her claim to the crown. She looks up. Her grin was phony and dazzling. Aurora, good morning. Michael told you that I would be relocating to this office, didn't he? You will now report to me. A chilly weight settles in my belly, causing my stomach to slump. Yet my face doesn't show it. What role do I play? With a steely voice I ask. After giving it some thought, she tilts her head and shrugs. We'll find a solution. It could include anything. Assistance. A sneer twitches her lips. She makes no effort to hide. Michael advised you to take a break. Actually unwind. Engage in some pastime activities. Don't worry though, you will still have some role in the business. It helps my own business. While she took photos and drank drinks, I pulled her out of the abyss. My ears are pounded by my heartbeat, yet I remain unflinching. I draw in a deep breath. Allow it to stabilize me. After every late night and sacrifice, they want me out. For all the solutions I bleed, I'm being thrown away like a piece of trash. As if I were worth that rumpled $50 note. I have it folded in my handbag. I look at her. Then, beyond the entrance, the Bennett Industries emblem is imprinted into the glass walls. A family heritage was originally associated with this name, pride. It is now only treachery. You get it? Final, I say in a flat tone. I don't give Sophie the satisfaction of a fight, but her grin gets bigger. My heels click on the tile as I turn and go. It was a purposeful, piercing sound. A single idea rages in my head as the elevator doors fall shut behind me. They believe they have triumphed. They believe I'll go away without a trace. They don't know what will happen next. A cemetery of mismatched workstations and flickering fluorescent lights may be found in the building's furthest corner, my new station, between two interns who don't even know my name is a little scratch table. The next morning, I sit there with my laptop open, observing the mayhem that is taking on around the company. It's clear that Sophie is now in command. She dismisses department heads who attempt to provide advice in favor of her pals as she swoops through in her heels and fitted jacket. Individuals whose sole requirement is a mutual preference for expensive wine. The business is not only in risk, it is on the verge of collapse. She's making judgments based on instinct, yet my program is still operating. No strategy, no data. Customers are beginning to inquire. Workers look at each other anxiously. From my small exile, I can see it all. My heartbeat steady. My hands remain still. In the hopes that I would become less noticeable, they have pushed me to the periphery, the CTO's ghost. I was once. I don't argue, though. I don't barge into her office and ask to be put back in. I observe. And I'll know exactly what's going on in less than a week. Sophie has too much on her plate. Drowning in an unmanageable position. Michael is also too proud to notice. Their weight is causing my kingdom to crumble. I shut down my laptop. Allow a little icy grin to pull at my lips as I recline on the groaning chair. They believe I've been buried. They want me to sit here appreciative of the crumbs, and perhaps even plead for permission to stay. They are mistaken. I'm not going to fight from here. I'll construct a larger structure. They are unable to touch it. Observe me. A dark haven is the coffee shop across the street from Bennett Industries. The aroma of roasted beans and the steam from the espresso machine fill the air. As the dusk light fades, I sit in a corner booth and trace the edge of a folder that I've been keeping safe like a hidden weapon. Ethan Carter enters first as the door jingles. When they were drowning in red, the CFO, who was 42 and sharp-eyed, balanced our finances. 34 is followed by Olivia Hayes. Behind her serene demeanor, her data analyst mind is already racing. Then my 3 a.m. coding companion Ryan Patel, 31, came along. Nights when our only source of energy was coffee. I understand why every one of them quit within the last month. I noticed the same cracks as they did. As they settle in, their mugs clinking against the wood, I slip the folder across the table. Something fresh is being built. I say plainly, in a forceful yet quiet voice. With a solemn gaze, Ethan leans forward. His facial wrinkles were getting deeper. Here, what's the play? I tap the folder, allowing my next word to sink in. I have the most recent version of the program, which has the most sophisticated capabilities. It is not theirs. I didn't really post anything to their servers. Ryan smiles as he sees the code in his mind, while Olivia's eyes narrow in calculation. Ethan lets out a long, pleased sigh. You're claiming ownership of it? Totally? I give a nod. My heartbeat is steady. My tone has a steely undertone. The previous method is used by Bennett Industries. This one is stronger, quicker, and better. We own it as well. They act without hesitation. No doubts, no questions. They're in. As simple as that, since they are aware of what I am aware of. Michael and Sophie failed to see the one item that may have prevented their deaths. I open the folder between us and lean it back. The weak light illuminated pages of designs and specifications. I propose we begin immediately. It's not a request either. It's an order. As we converse, the coffee shop becomes less noticeable. Low voices, making plans. They believe I've been buried. I'm not simply dragging myself out of the tomb, though. I am constructing an empire. Papers and flashing displays are everywhere in my flat. I crouched over my laptop, honing the program alone as the city lights spilled through the window. A month has passed since the coffee shop, my fingers flitting across the keys to make it flawless after a month of quiet and late nights. I own the code. every improvement, every paragraph. Furthermore, it is now a beast that surpasses all previous Bennett Industries models. I don't need to sleep, but I don't. On my desk, framed, the $50 note serves as a crumpled reminder of my motivation. The next week I make my pitch, not to Sophie or Michael, but to their rivals. My heels clack on polished floors as I enter slick boardrooms. As I demonstrate how system tasks that formerly took days can now be completed in seconds, my voice remains calm. Expected profits will skyrocket. Within weeks, 3 bids arrive, each more eager than the last. I sign a contract by the end of the month, $50 million sub advance. Rights to a logistical behemoth that previously pleaded with Bennett for crumbs. That evening, I recline on my chair as the city stretches out below me, and the contract is signed and drying. Ethan, my phone buzzes to indicate that the money has been deposited into our account. Olivia is already sketching out expansions for her clients. Ryan is making changes to the rollout. We are more than a team, we are a machine. And the engine is me. I grin as the $50 note looks at me from its frame, quiet and cold. That's how much Michael valued me. Sophie assumed I would blend in. Assistants. They were mistaken. Bennett Industries is no longer my only rival. I'm gonna ruin them. The idea becomes ingrained in my chest. Not as rage, but as assurance. I shut down my laptop. I let the stillness envelop me as the screen's illumination faded. This is only the start. Bennett Industries is collapsing, and I don't even need to enter. From the outside, I can see it. I have a new workplace with a view of the city. Silently, the first indication appears. A customer that has been with Michael for 10 years terminates their agreement. No justification. This is just a press announcement announcing new collaborations. Then another jump ship. Then I hear a third set of rumors that reverberate across the business. Keeping my hands clean, I put my ear to the floor. The Blade is my software that is now running rival systems. Inside their glass-walled mausoleum, they are just bleeding to death. Sophie is going crazy. Through the grapevine, I learn about it. Heads of departments fired at random. She demands answers in a shrill voice that reverberates down the hallways. Nobody has. She is acting instinctively when making decisions. No logic, no data. Simply the haughtiness of someone who has never had to prove herself. Michael is too preoccupied with playing golf with investors to notice the bleeding. Or perhaps he's too arrogant to acknowledge it. In any case, I'm not doing anything to stop the company I saved from collapsing under their weight. I am seated at my desk. Our new headquarters, Innova Systems, is sleek and angular, and I'm watching the stock ticker on my screen. Bennett Industries declines by an additional 5%, and then 10%. Former coworkers begin texting me to inquire about my whereabouts, pleading for employment. I don't respond because I owe them nothing, not because I'm spiteful. With a wineglass and a smirk, Sophie believed she could manage my empire. Michael believed that I would continue to be a cog in his wheel. They are no longer relevant, and I am the one dragging them along with me. Hold still while I drink my coffee. The city is bustling. Outside the window, the ironies are sufficiently thick to taste. This is what they're doing to themselves. I don't even have to exert myself. I lean back and put the mug down, the ceramic clinking softly. They desired my departure. Their wish was granted. They're drowning in it now. The ballroom of the tech innovators gala glitters like a crown jewel, chandeliers dripping light over black tie, elites sipping champagne and trading million-dollar handshakes. I step inside my heels, clicking on the polished floor. The sound, a quiet echo of that night. I walked away from Michael's table. Tonight's different. Tonight, I'm not the overlooked daughter, I'm the guest of honor. And they all know it. Whispers follow me as I move through the crowd. Is that Aurora Bennett? She runs Nova Systems now. Didn't she sink her father's company? I ignore them, my chin high, my pulse calm. The keynote speaker wraps up, his voice booming over the applause. Tonight, we recognize the visionaries pushing the industry forward. Aurora Bennett, creator of the most groundbreaking logistics software in the market today, has transformed how global corporations operate. Her company, Nova Systems, is now valued at over $500 million. The room erupts, the sound crashing over me like a wave. And I stand smoothing my dress, a sleek midnight blue number that feels like armor. I walk to the stage, the spotlight hot on my skin, and take the mic. Thank you. I say, my voice steady, cutting through the noise. This isn't about me. It's about what's possible when you build something real. Nova Systems isn't a fluke. It's proof that merit matters. The applause swells again, but my eyes drift to the back of the room. There they are, Michael and Sophie, tucked in a shadowed corner, their faces pale and drawn. Bennett Industries is weeks from bankruptcy, and they know it. Michael's shoulders slump, the commanding patriarch reduced to a ghost. Sophie clutches her champagne glass like it's a lifeline, her smirk long gone. I lock eyes with them, and for a moment the room fades. Just me and the family that threw me away. I smile, not out of spite, not out of revenge, but because I've won on my own terms. The $50 bill flashes in my mind, that crumpled insult, and I let the memory fuel me as I step off the stage. The crowd partying like I'm royalty. I don't gloat, I don't need to. The numbers speak for me. $500 million, 48% market share and climbing. Someone presses a glass into my hand and I sip the champagne, the bubbles sharp on my tongue. Michael's gaze follows me, heavy with something I can't name. Regret maybe, or disbelief. Sophie won't even look up. I turn away, the gala's glitter wrapping around me, and let the victory settle in my bones. They thought they'd buried me. They believed I'd disappear. But I didn't just rise, I soared. And this is only the start. The conference room at Nova Systems is a sleek fortress of glass and steel, my territory now. And I sit at the head of the table when my assistant buzzes in. At precisely 10 a.m., Aurora, your father and sister are come to visit you. I sat back in my chair, inhaling gently, the leather groaning under me. So it's come to this, send them in. I say, my voice serene, steady, like the silence before a storm. The door opens and Michael and Sophie stroll in like ghosts of their old selves. Michael, 58, looks older, dejected, his tailored suit falling slack on a frame that's lost its sharpness. The 27-year-old Sophie clings to her expensive handbag, but her eyes reveal her weariness. She is no longer able to conceal herself behind the facade. They pause and look at the chairs across from me, so I make a quiet motion and wait for them to sit. Michael clears his throat, as Sophie's fingernails tap the armrest in a tense twitch. He spoke in a calm but strained tone. We need to discuss, Aurora. I put my arms on the desk and tilt my head, staring straight ahead. What precisely do you want me to accomplish? Clasping his hands as if he were still in command, he leans forward. Even though we've had our disagreements, we're still family. Bennett Industries is having difficulties. We need your assistance. It's there. The appeal. I've been waiting for the weakness in his defense. As I watch them wriggle, I let it dangle in midair before speaking my tone. As cold as ice, I'm necessary to you. It's funny because you said I wasn't a good leader a year ago. I was just excellent at technical stuff, you said. Michael has the audacity to display frustration. He clenched his jaw. You understand how business is conducted. Decisions have been taken, but we must now proceed. Together, we can restore Bennett Industries if you return. At last, Sophie glances up, her face tense. Aurora, don't be petty. You are necessary to us, all right? I genuinely chuckle as the sound reverberates off the glass walls, abrupt and harsh. I'm necessary to you. I repeat, lowering my voice as I lean forward. My business is valued at $500 million. Yours is just a few weeks away from going bankrupt. Tell me once more, which of us lacks business management skills? There is silence, satisfying and pure. Michael's face also gets harder. Please, Aurora. He utters the word. A blade at my chest. Because it's everything, not because it hurts. I was refused by him. No, I reply gently but firmly, and Sophie tenses up. I'm sorry. I look her in the eye without flinching. Bennett Industries is not necessary for me. You flung me away even though you needed me. You made a decision. Live with it now. Michael lets out a quick sigh, his irritation showing. Are you really going to allow your own family to fail? Smooth and unshakable, I grin. I didn't allow anything to occur. Right now, you ruined. You made Sophie the boss. Red in the face, she pulls back from her chair and stands up suddenly. You're simply resentful. I've always made you jealous. I get up to straighten my blouse. My voice was as solid as ever. I don't have to feel envious, Sophie. I already have everything of your desires. They depart. Michael remains silent in rage as Sophie screams away. I sit down again and release my breath as the doors close. I am at liberty. The news reverberates throughout the business 3 days later. Bennett Industries files for bankruptcy. It is present everywhere. National headlines, business journals, and internet discussion boards. Poor leadership causes the screaming former giant to crumble overnight, costing $300 million. Business. Every piece gives me credit for its limited existence, emphasizing how my software was clearly the lifeblood and how it was simply a matter of time once I left. My assistant Claire knocks on my office door while I'm in a meeting. She lowered her voice. You might want to watch this, Aurora. I scan the printed document she hands me. A little smirk formed on my lips. The Bennett Industries are going through a liquidation. Everything is for sale, including the Bennett name itself, the headquarters, and the assets. Michael took out desperate loans and over-leveraged it. All of it is now being seized by the banks. I could purchase every single piece. Furthermore, the poetic justice is nearly flawless. I believe it was the crumpled insult from a year ago that night, in my penthouse, with a view of the city, rather than the $50 money that was flashing in my head. My choice becomes very plain and distinct. I don't use a proxy or a company. I give the bankruptcy lawyer a call on my own the following morning. I want to directly bid on every asset owned by Bennett Industries. With a pause for impact, I utter the name. I'm in their former boardroom a week later. Michael used to govern like a king. I now own the crown. The document splayed in front of me. The completed contract rests atop a sleek pen in gold and black. As I pick up the pen, Michael and Sophie sit across from me, looking pale. Sophie murmurs, her voice trembling, "I still can't believe you're doing this." My eyebrows go up, as calm as ever. What are you doing? Buying a business that has failed. Obtaining a name that is no longer valuable. She frowns, but Michael's tone is sharply cut. Aurora, simply sign the fucking documents. After a moment, I move them back across the table. I point to a clause, and he blinks, perplexed. I just announce I'm dissolving Bennett Industries. With a gasp, Sophie grabs the document. It's being shut down by you. I nod, a little but steady smile on my face. Indeed, everything, including patents and all rights, to the Bennett name. It is permanently decommissioned after being absorbed by Nova Systems. Michael tightens his jaw. Are you retaliating against us? Leaning forward, I spoke steadily. Some things deserve to die, which is why I'm doing this. It ends when I sign. A single stroke wiped the Bennett period. The home Michael formerly owned, which is now up for auction, is the setting for the Bennett family banquet. A gathering that no longer belongs to him is illuminated by chandeliers. I pull up in my car, quietly confident, wearing a bespoke black gown. The request? A politeness from an unfamiliar person with our past. Whispers follow as I enter, tucked in my clutch. Aurora Bennett is that person. She ruined her father's business. I don't give a damn. Nothing is what I'm here to prove. I'm here to put a stop to it. I see them in a dimly lit nook, far from the influential people they used to court. Michael appears diminished, with remorse glimmering in his eyes. Sophie's mask fractures as she grips her glass tightly. My heels click as I approach them, and they tighten when I come to a halt. Aurora. I've never heard a voice so quiet, Michael remarks. I cock my head. Michael sighs in resignation. This is where you brag, I guess. I place my drink on a tray and smile a little. No, Michael. I bid you farewell here, Sophie blinked. What? With a forceful yet gentle tone, I take a step closer. I worked for years to prove myself worthy of your favor. That is no longer necessary for me. I look at Sophie. She tensed her face. I also don't despise you. I feel sorry for you. I develop my own strength. You won't. The gala fades behind me as I leave, leaving everybody stunned. I grin as I get into my car and look out at the city. It's not over yet. I'm just getting started.